Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, facing a number of legal battles, most of which are coming from Democrats up in arms about DOGE decluttering the federal government. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt will join us, as promised, to react to the pushback against DOGE. But first, senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy is live on the North Lawn. Peter, how much have taxpayers saved because of all this work on the part of DOGE?
So far, in the neighborhood of $50 billion, Sandra, and officials here are claiming that things are about to get much bigger if they can make some major changes, because they are saying that the first look at the Treasury Department has revealed that $4.7 trillion worth of payments at Treasury went out the door without a Treasury account symbol, which is similar to a billing code. And that means that $4.7 trillion is basically untraceable.
You're looking at somehow some of these bureaucrats from D.C. that have never left, but then make hundreds of thousands of dollars and are somehow worth tens of millions of dollars, close to $100 million in certain circumstances. Do we believe that there's a chance that they could be funneling these to NGOs with interest? Yes, we know that happens.
Elon Musk posted about allegations of Social Security fraud. My rough estimate is that it's 80% lack of competence / caring and 20% fraud, but that's still a lot of fraud. There are Democrats, though, countering the fraud is actually by billionaires at the White House trying to help billionaire friends.
Corruption's up. Chaos is up, and yes, prices are up for Americans. And that's why we are standing up against this effort to basically put their tax cuts for billionaires on the backs of working people, whether it's Social Security or whether it is prescription drugs or whether it is housing or child care.
The acting head of the Social Security Administration is leaving after a disagreement with DOGE engineers about access to sensitive taxpayer information. She had been the acting SSA administrator since January 21st, one day into Trump's term. Sandra.
All right, Peter Doocy live at the White House for us. Peter, thank you. John.
All right, for more on DOGE's work so far, let's bring in Karoline Leavitt, White House Press Secretary. Karoline, great to spend the afternoon with you. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, John. Great to see you.
So the Democrats, as we know, have got their hair on fire complaining about DOGE and cost cutting. But if we go back in history, Barack Obama announced something very similar back in 2011. And then if you go all the way back to 1993, remember when Al Gore and Bill Clinton said this.
This report tells us how to cut waste, cut red tape, streamline the bureaucracy, change procurement rules, change the personnel rules, and create a government that works better and costs less.
The Reinventing Government, or RIGO, report aims to save $108 billion over 5 years through eliminating scores of wasteful programs and regulations. Among the 800 recommendations, eliminating 12% of the federal workforce, merging some government agencies like the FBI, the DEA, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, closing hundreds of government offices outside Washington.
I don't remember Democrats complaining about that, and they wanted to cut twice the number of federal jobs that President Trump does.
That's exactly right, John. If you listen to those words, those are from Democrat Party leaders who are allegedly still beloved by Democrat voters today. And they were promising the American people the very same things that President Trump promised the American people, won the election on, and now is actually delivering on. That's the only difference between what President Trump is doing and what these Democrats have promised the American people for decades. He's actually following through on the promise to cut federal government waste, fraud, and abuse. And this is the first president to actually do such a thing, and the Democrats are up in arms about it. But our country is going bankrupt, and President Trump is not going to sit back and allow it to happen.
Karoline, can I ask you for a clarification? Sandra here, by the way, and thanks for coming back on with us. It seems there's being a lot made of what Elon Musk's role is actually at DOGE. The president has introduced him as the head of DOGE multiple times in interviews, yet there's this affidavit that we've been able to get our hands on here that the press has as well. That it contradicts the White House claim that he's the head of DOGE. This affidavit actually says he doesn't work for DOGE at all. Reading directly from it, it says Musk is not an employee of the U.S. DOGE Service or the U.S. DOGE Service Temporary Organization. That's according to the director of the White House's Office of Administration. So what is his role at DOGE?
Sure, I'm happy to clarify. Elon Musk is a special government employee here at the White House, serving at the direction of the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Elon Musk has been tasked with overseeing DOGE on behalf of the President. And DOGE employees, DOGE folks have been onboarding at respective agencies across our federal bureaucracy as political appointees, just like any other political appointee gets on board with the new administration with the changing of hands, and those individuals are helping the secretaries at all of our agencies that have been nominated and confirmed by President Trump in the United States Senate to cut waste, fraud, and abuse at these respective agencies. So that's the way DOGE has been set up, and that's the way it will continue to operate.
All right. Well, let's come back to the plane crash in Toronto that happened yesterday, and the fact that Democrats seem to be pointing the finger of blame at the president. I'm not quite sure how you make that connection when the crash occurred in a different country. But here's what Chuck Schumer said. He said, quote, "To those asking whether it matters that the plane's destination was in Canada, the flight took off from Minneapolis. The FAA was still responsible for inspecting the aviation equipment, and Trump just let go of FAA safety specialists." We have no idea what caused this crash. We have some video of it coming in for a hard landing, but we don't know if it was a failure of equipment or if it was weather, if it was pilot error, or if it was something else. And yet you get the minority leader in the Senate immediately pointing fingers at the president. Your response?
It's incredibly irresponsible for Chuck Schumer to say such a thing when the investigation is still underway. And as you rightfully pointed out, John, this crash unfortunately took place in Canadian airspace with Canadian air traffic controllers overseeing it. And the facts about the FAA are that no air traffic controllers have been let go by Secretary Duffy or this new administration. In fact, Secretary Duffy has put great emphasis on hiring the best and the brightest air traffic controllers who want to be part of the FAA, and President Trump signed a very strong executive order to ensure that the FAA and all federal government agencies are focused on merit and skill-based hiring. We want the best and the brightest, the most competent individuals in positions, especially of public safety at the FAA, the Department of Transportation, and all departments across this federal government, so we can best serve the American people. So while Secretary Buttigieg and the Biden administration sat on their hands when it came to aviation safety for 4 years, this administration is taking it seriously and is actively recruiting the best and the brightest to join this very important field.
Karoline, we know that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has been having some critical meetings overseas, Saudi Arabia. We've got Steve Witkoff joining him as well, Mike Waltz. What can you tell us is coming from that? He seems to be putting out some optimism that things may be getting closer to an actual deal being made.
I'm so glad you asked, Sandra, because this is a truly monumental step towards peace in the Russia-Ukraine war. At the direction of President Trump, Secretary Rubio, a special envoy Steve Witkoff, and our national security advisor Mike Waltz spoke to the Russians today and made significant steps towards peace. This is the first step of many. And I'd like to point out that our administration, including President Trump himself, has been in direct correspondence with the Ukrainians as well, including President Zelensky. President Trump also talked to our European allies yesterday. He had a phone call with France's President Emmanuel Macron. Next week, the Prime Minister of the UK will be here at the White House. And so we're ensuring that all parties are heard. But you have to speak to both sides of the war in order to truly negotiate a deal and problem solve. And this is a significant first step towards peace. Again, when the previous administration had no negotiations, no discussions, really no diplomacy in this effort, President Trump and his team are taking significant steps with just being here for 4 weeks.
I want to ask you, if I could, Caroline, about New York City Mayor Eric Adams, who is the subject of a meeting today that Governor Kathy Hochul is having, which a lot of people are reading as whether or not she should remove him from office. A federal judge has just asked the Department of Justice to come into court and explain why the charges against him were dropped. Democrats are suggesting there was a quid pro quo involved here, that in exchange for cooperation on immigration, the DOJ would drop the charges against Eric Adams. He has denied that. What do you say?
Well, I defer you to the Department of Justice for specifics on this case and the ongoing case and the matters against Mayor Eric Adams. What I do know is that Eric Adams has been incredibly courageous in speaking out against his own party when many Democrats refused to do so, about the terrible border invasion of illegal immigrants that the previous administration allowed to happen, which we know had a grave impact on New York City, on the education system, the transportation system, on taxpayer dollars in that city that were going to housing illegal migrants in hotels. Thankfully, all of that is coming to an end thanks to the strong leadership of President Trump. And New York will only be a sanctuary place for law-abiding American citizens and New Yorkers under this administration. And Mayor Adams has put out a helping hand to try to help the federal government in ending the border invasion. He was not heard by the last administration, but he is being heard by this administration because President Trump and his team will work with anyone to do what's best for law-abiding, tax-paying American citizens.
Well, Karoline, we've been carrying your press briefings live here on America Reports. We look forward to the next one. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right.